Perfect. Thank you, Jen. So my name is Simon Rossiter. I'm a settlement advisor here at Ringler. I've been in the settlement industry now for almost 20 years. And when NASTA approached us about doing kind of educating the greater NASTA community about AI and how's it affecting claims and what's going on, I kind of reached out to Rob Lewis, who because of his expertise and his company's expertise, and thought it might be a great opportunity to bring Rob on to speak to the NASTA members about how AI, what AI is, how it's being utilized, and how it's affecting the claims industry. So Rob, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your background, and we can get started.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see you all today. Yeah, so by way of background, let me first start out and say I am not a technical guy by any means. I'm not an AI expert. I don't call myself that. But I do have some insight on it and what we've done within our business, and just some insights that we've gained, throughout the last couple of years that I think might be helpful. And so I look forward to chatting with you guys and sharing information. But if you ever want to get real technical, that's a whole nother day. It's a whole nother presentation, and I can pull the right people from our team on for that. But this one's going to be a little bit more general about AI and how we can use it, and different techniques that are available out there. And Simon, just a little bit of background on myself. I recognize a few of the names coming through. Been in the industry for a long time now. I started out as a defense attorney, doing work comp and general liability defense for a number of years in both New Jersey and North Carolina. And then in 2006, was one of the co-founders of a Medicare compliance business called Crow Parity back in the day. And then that business was acquired by Verisk in 2010. And I continued to run that business for the last 12 years or so as president, and then moved into an innovation role over the last 2 years, where I'm focusing on things like AI, focusing on innovation, new product development. So I've really kind of dug in on this technology and its use cases. And so that's, kind of what I'm looking forward to sharing with you all today.
So, maybe we get started just by kind of setting the stage with some basic terms about AI, right? Everybody's kind of heard about AI, but maybe you can give everybody just a little bit of background about some of the basic terms. So if we get into more detail later, they have an understanding.
Yeah, and again, I'm gonna try. My goal is to try to simplify this to a level that makes sense for the majority of people. If there's technical folks on the phone, this is probably going to be below you. But the way, first of all, let me just start out with a quote that I think is really interesting around AI, and it's from the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, and he said that AI is probably the most important thing humanity has ever worked on. I think of it as something more profound than electricity or fire. That's a really profound statement to be made. And, and it's kind of scary, right? Like, as you think through some of these things and you read some of the news stories going on around generative AI and some of the horror stories, it is definitely something that we need to take cautiously, right? And so I think understanding it is key to anything like that, is to really kind of dig in and start to understand it. So to kind of lay that foundation for what it is, let's just kind of start with artificial intelligence. Let's start there. What is it? Basically, the way I like to think about artificial intelligence, it's making a computer or a robot to be smart. Just like we learn and make decisions as humans, AI lets machines do things that normally need human brains. Example would be recognizing faces in a photo, right? That's an example or use case of AI. And we think about, you probably all have one in your pocket with your Siri or your Alexa, right? Anytime you're using something like that, that's an example of AI where it's helping you to perform a task, setting a reminder, answering a question, playing music, but it's programmed to do that. It's programmed to be smart. The next piece below it would be machine learning. And machine learning is a way to teach AI how to get better at something by showing it examples. Okay, so take, for example, If a computer is to recognize a picture of a cat and know that it's a cat, you would show that computer many, many images of cats over a period of time, and it would begin to recognize that that is a cat, right? And the more it sees, the more data it looks at, the better it's going to be at recognizing and learning what a cat could be, right?
Yep.
And so an example of that in use case that I'm sure pretty much everybody on the phone is using, recommendation systems. If you use Netflix or listen to Pandora, it's going to tell you and recommend shows for you to watch and songs for you to listen to based upon time after time you kind of watching similar things, and it's going to draw from that and learn from that, and the machine learns as it goes and it gets smarter. Give you a couple more that we're going to hit on throughout the presentation. So let me just lay out a few more if I can, Simon.
Of course. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Natural language processing, or NLP, is another one that'll get talked about later. And this is a way for computers to be able to understand and work with human language. So it's basically teaching the computer how to read or how to listen or talk, right? And again, this is a classic example is Siri. Another great example that we can talk about later is chatbots. I'm sure we've all dealt with chatbots when we're calling for customer service to any company these days. They're actually getting really good, right?
Yeah.
And they get
Fairly
really
good.
good
Yeah.
through natural language processing. That's the technology that's teaching these machines how to be smarter and to be more responsive and more human-like, if you will. Another one that we'll talk about is OCR, optical character recognition. This is one most people are familiar with. If you're using PDFs, that's coming through an OCR technology where you're scanning something and extracting information from it. Taking a picture and extracting words or text out of that picture and making it something usable. And then the last one I'll touch on is neural networks. And if anybody wants kind of a summary description of these things, I've got kind of a running list I'm happy to share with everybody. But neural networks are a type of AI that gets very complicated and works a bit like a human brain with multiple layers. And I think the easiest way to think about this one is probably the most complex use case out there, which is the self-driving car, right? This is really complex stuff, and it's using lots of different networks and lots of different decision-making along the way to turn left or to turn right or to stop or recognize a road sign. Another really big one is fraud detection.
Okay.
You think about networks of fraudsters. So you've got the auto body shop, you've got the glass repair person, you've got all these different networks that if you look at one on its own, you're not going to see a pattern, but you lay enough data on top of it and you begin to see matches across that data, and it becomes really interesting.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of
Yeah.
a basic
The
overview.
generalization of AI.
Yeah,
And
and
I think
then
the one thing I get from that is that I think AI has been around a lot longer than a lot of people think in terms of these technologies out there. I mean, when ChatGPT was released, right, in 2022, everybody freaked out because, hey, AI can do something for me. But AI in its real form has been around for years. Siri's been around for years. It's been in existence, but the generative AI is kind of the thing that I think is terrifying people, where it can start to do things that in the past humans have been required to do and stuff like that. So can you just explain a little bit about the difference between AI and Gen AI, just so people can kind of get an understanding?
yeah, absolutely. And just on that history part, I love talking about that because I think a lot of people, when you talk to them about AI, everybody thinks, oh, this is new, this is scary, this is terrifying, right? The reality is, and this was shocking to me, but I actually did an article on this, and the history of AI actually goes back to 1950. It was
Wow.
the industry of AI, artificial intelligence, which is kind of exhibiting the intelligence of a human in a computer, traces back to 1950. 1956 was the first major conference that was held around AI. And these computer programs began in the 50s. Going through the 60s, we had robots that were able to reason and do actions based upon commands. And in like the 1990s, some folks will remember that IBM's Deep Blue won the chess match against the world champion, right?
Yep.
So like that was AI coming up through the 90s into the 2000s, and to your point, it's been in the insurance industry as well, right? Like it's been part of reviewing claims. It's been underwriting processes and techniques are being used throughout the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s. We see things like chatbots coming on board. We see things like OCR technology and extracting data from documents and automatically pre-filling it into a claim system, if you will,
Yep.
right? So yeah, it's been around for a long, long time. And I think that's actually comforting, right? Because this is not new technology. It's not
Yeah.
something that we need to be afraid of per se. And there is history here. I think your point on the Gen AI is a very, very good one. And I think that is where we see a lot of concern and we see a lot of questions. So what's the difference? Like what was the change there between traditional AI, if you will, and Gen AI? And I think the way to think about it is traditional AI, um, you know, these are the classic examples we've talked through already, right? Where you're using natural language processing, you're using machine learning, and computers are learning to respond to commands. But the key is that in traditional AI, the functionality is going to be limited to what they're programmed to do, right? They've
Correct.
only
Yep.
seen cat pictures, right? It doesn't know what a dog is, but it knows what a cat is, right? Like it's only seen those things. Where AI takes it to the next step further is that this is a category where it learns from existing data and then is able to create original content. That's the new thing, that original content piece, effectively allowing a computer to generate something brand new that would typically be made by a human, like a poem, like a song, like a picture of a cat on the moon holding a flag, right? Like it can do
Yep.
all of those things. Anything you can think of, it can create that now for you. So this ability for a machine to be a creator, if you will, I think that's the part that people get nervous about, rightfully so. And it's a little bit scary. And one thing I do really love to encourage people, and again, it's hard with people in the audience and not being able to kind of talk to everybody, but there's a lot of different levels of experience in playing with AI that goes on today. And if you're not using it, my first recommendation is please do it. Like go log on, sign into ChatGPT and start playing with it.
Yep.
Because it's really fascinating. And I think it's until you dig in and start using it that you can begin to think about the use cases that you could apply it for. So I'm a big fan. I love it. I use it all the time. I have it on my phone. I have it on my computer. I just think it's a really neat tool to begin to start playing with.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's one of those things that I got into it assisting with writing out emails, generating graphics for marketing, stuff like that, where it's a great use to give you ideas about what's going on with what you can use and how you can use it for. And obviously, I think one of the things obviously we'll address later is the potential, like the scary side of it. But I think everybody just have the understanding that it's not like you're going to type something into ChatGPT and then dump it in an email and send it out. There is this level of you still need the human fact checking and stuff like that of it, which I think is important.
Yeah, and that's going to be a theme that I'm going to have throughout, what I'm talking about today.
Yeah.
We refer to it as human in the loop, and I'm not sure where we got it from. I'm sure somebody smarter than I did came up with that, but I love that concept of a human in the loop. We're not looking to replace the human in this stuff. We want a human in the loop, right? We want somebody to
Yep.
be able to make those decisions, to be able to make the judgment calls that we are, as experts in an industry, trained to be able to make. But the AI can help. It can provide you the data. It can provide you insight, but it shouldn't be the ultimate decision maker for you.
Yeah. So, maybe that's a good, transition into talking about it. In terms of, you and I have reviewed and talked about the product that you guys have for reviewing, medical records. And, I know that it's kind of innovative with how it does stuff. Maybe that's something that we can talk about it in a real life use that the Verisk has in terms of how does this product work and what is it really used for, and how have you guys embraced AI to speed up and help resolve a part of a claims issue that used to take hours and hours that can now take, minutes, at best.
Yeah, so we have a product that we rolled out called Discovery Navigator, and the journey on it's actually, I'll just share it with you. From our business, our core business, we did Medicare set asides. We still do.
Yep.
It's the lion's share of our
Yeah,
business.
I think most people on this call have probably seen a Verisk
Yeah,
MSA come across their desk in the past,
and you're all familiar with
week. Yeah.
MSAs, right? And
Yep.
the thing with an MSA is we have to get the last few years of medical records, and you've got to review those records, you've got to summarize them, and then you've got to forecast out future care for this individual. The net result of that is we would get truckloads of boxes coming to our office on a daily basis with files. I mean, to this day, we still get paper files from some folks, right?
Yep.
But you get these large boxes of files, and it could be hundreds or thousands of pages of medical records. And what we need to do is we need to go through them. We need to organize them. We have to put them in chronological order. We got to remove the duplicates, and then we've got to summarize it, right? And to do that, we have an assembly line of people to put that together in our practice. So what we were looking to do was to figure out a way to automate that step. Can we take some of that manual stuff out of that and automate it? And we went to market. We couldn't find anything that really fit with how we work. And so we put a business case together, and got the funding through Verisk to build a product. And so we brought in the data science team, we brought in our medical team, and we literally spent a couple of years on this project, of deciphering medical records and going line by line, nurses going line by line and determining things that are useful, things that are medically necessary, surgeries, CPT codes, all these critical pieces, and sort of creating a dictionary, if you will, by which we could run analytics on. So we built this entirely for our own use case, and it works. So that's our Discovery Navigator, and we figured once we built it internally, we then started talking about it with some customers and found that there was definitely a need in the market for this solution.
Yeah.
And so now, I mean, we have attorneys using it, we've got carriers using it, both plaintiff and defense attorneys. And structured settlement brokers could use it. It's a time saver, right? I mean, it's what it's designed to do is to save time and energy. But what's important about what I've just described there, all of that is traditional AI. Those are all the stuff going back to the 60s, 90s,
Yep.
2000s, right? That's traditional AI models. And what those things do is we can go through and we can extract out from the medicals. We can take out, all of the key things such as drugs, prescription drugs, ICD codes, surgeries, injections, anything you would want to pull out, you name it. We have a model that runs that. And then we have hyperlinks that link out to everything. So think of it as like a cover sheet with an index that links out to anything that gets searched for.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that when Gen AI rolled out, we immediately thought of like, could we use Gen AI here? And the idea is could we create a summary of the medical records using Gen AI, where it comes up with that creation, the new summary. You take this book and can you summarize it and give me the cliff notes, right? That's the kind of thing Gen AI is really good at. And what was interesting was the data analysts on our team. The initial thought of using Gen AI was to run it on all the medical records, and what they got back, and they said was useless. Like there was too much information contained within all of the medicals. You run 1,000 pages of meds through it. There was too much information to summarize it down to a coherent place, right? That would be usable. But then what they did is they said, all right, well, what if we actually just run Gen AI on the output of our models where we extracted the key information, and that was the magic. That was what worked. So now what we have is a Gen AI summary tool that sits on top of our traditional models. And some people to this day are afraid of Gen AI and don't want anything to do with it. And I get that. I understand
Yeah,
it. You don't need to use it, right? You can use the traditional models for the, the dedupes and the extraction of key terms and all that stuff. But if you want the summary, if you want the cliff notes, we can now do that too by running the Gen AI model on top of our existing model. And to me, that was just really, it was cool to see. I love it when, people use creativity to kind of come up with a solution. The analytics team pulling that together, they were really excited. They came back and they were so excited that it really worked. This
yeah.
thing really works.
Now, do you guys have any challenges with it? Obviously, in terms of just this, I mean, listen, we've all seen medicals. I think everybody that's attending here has had that one client where you ask for 10 to 15 pages of medicals and they send you a document PDF with 1,000 pages in it and you're going through. And now, do you guys have any issues with obviously handwriting, duplicate pages, stuff like that? Do you guys, was that something where AI was able to review that stuff and eliminate some of the concerns you had?
Yeah. So, and again, this is where I think of a multi-pronged approach. We actually partnered with AWS on that front. And from our research and what we looked into, they were best in class on the OCR technology. And the way I would describe it is if you can read the handwriting, the machine now can read it too. I mean, it's as good as we are. But as well as I know, looking through these medicals, there's some you can't read.
Yeah,
So what we've done is we've come up with a model that it gives a confidence level on record. So if and you can set it to be, hey, if it's anything over a 75% confidence level, it runs through. Anything above 75%, we want to take a manual look at it. Again, human in the loop. Let's make sure that this isn't something really important that wasn't able to be read.
yeah,
So we have that ability to kind of customize the confidence level to whatever you want. And then you can take a look at anything that there's questions around. And it's not often that there's many pages in there that you get the question mark, but I think it's really important that you get a human in the loop because it could be something that's important.
yeah,
And you don't want to just ignore that, right? Or let it run through and say, there was nothing there, nothing the machine could read.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's the technology, and again, it's AWS's technology. I think they're best in class, and they partnered with us and kind of working on this together, and it was really fun to do that.
Very nice. So obviously, this is something that a lot of carriers, and I know, like you said, plaintiff firms, defense firms are obviously, this product that you've generated that they're obviously using to cut down the time, right? Rather than having a paralegal or an adjuster or somebody else look through hundreds of pages of medicals as they come in for a case intake or anything like that. This is a system now that can basically do that for them, provide them with a summary, detail out the important parts of what medicals, what treatment they're receiving, and then it gives them a detailed report of, hey, the client, the claimant, the client, whatever it is on XYZ medications, their treatment, they've had this, they've done that. That's all stuff that this system can now provide for them, right?
Yeah, no, exactly, and we've thought through analysis around how do you show ROI on something like this, and just to kind of give you an insight, think about a typical file. Manually, it would probably take you about 2 minutes per page to read, right? We can do that in seconds, like it's done in seconds now. But I think the other part is not just the speed, but it's also the quality. And I'll give you an example. We had a file run through the other day. It's 26,000 pages long.
Jeez.
Big case. If you're reviewing that file, your attention level on page 3 versus page 19,000 is
Yeah.
going to be very different. Like at that point, your eyes are fuzzy and you're just marking stuff off. So I think there's also a quality component that the machine doesn't get tired of reading the
Yeah.
records, and so it's looking for these things. It's searching for the cat on every single page, and it's finding it, right? Whereas a human is gonna get a little tired at whether it's page 350 or page 10,000.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element there where it's a quality component too, where I think this is actually something where a machine can do it better, not replace, do it better, and then highlight the things that need to be looked at and highlight the things that it didn't recognize so that the human can step in, intervene, and make sure that everything's accurate.
Yeah.
And for any attorney or anybody in an industry, like, you're not going to just trust your paralegal to do all the review. You're not going to just trust the machine to do it either. You're still going to review it, right? Like, you're going to look through those records. So it just helps you to look through it quicker, by kind of directing you to the more important aspects of a claim.
Yeah, and it's in its industry. It's kind of a little bit outside our industry. My wife works for a higher education institution, and they're using AI in a similar way, right? They're using it to review students' papers when they're being sent back to review it to see if it's been plagiarized,
Oh, that's cool.
what's going on. And they've also now got software that's used to determine if AI has been used to
To write it.
generate a paper at the same time. But yet again, it goes back to that confidence level, right? It comes back and says, hey, we're 20% confident that this paper has been plagiarized. You still need that human interaction. I think that's the one part that I think a lot of people are joining this call to go, hey, am I going to be replaced by a computer in the next 5 years here? And I think that the simple answer to that is no, you still need human interaction, but is there a way to have AI help you do your job better, quicker, and like you said, take out some of that human error component that if obviously someone's reviewing 27,000 pages of medicals, it's something that, an AI system can do a lot better.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
so
I'm with you on that, right? Like, I don't think this is going to take people's jobs overnight, right? I don't think that's the case. And and again, I'll just use our example, of in our business, the people that we had who were opening those files and going through it and organizing it and all that stuff, they didn't get laid off. They got promoted into new roles. Like, we moved them into like a paralegal type role, or working on a claim where they're on the phone now with the adjusters. And isn't that actually a better use of their time, right?
yeah,
Like,
100%.
spending
Yeah,
time on the phone with a client versus going through and looking for duplicates and removing paper clips and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't think it does. I don't think it replaces the jobs per se. But somebody told me this last week, at a conference, and I really liked it. And I'll probably get it wrong, but it was something along the lines of, AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI will.
I think that's a great quote.
I did too. And I really love that, because that's what gets me thinking about, like, all right, how can we use it today to do what we are already doing, but do it better?
Yep.
Because if I don't figure that out, somebody else is.
Yeah.
And
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 like you
and
said, if somebody's now not spending their time doing XYZ and they can spend it on marketing or whatever else they can to get business from away, then yeah, that person's now figured out the 4 hours a day that I was spending doing X, AI is now helping me do that. That gives me 4 hours back that I can go and do a better job with something else in my, for my clients. So I
yeah,
agree with
and
you 100%.
and I think that's, like, for me, that's the key, is the time with the client. Like, giving you more time to spend with your client, being on the phone with your client, in person with your client, not having to do all the manual stuff in the background, but anything you can do to get more client time, I think grows business, right? That's, regardless of what business you're in, that's what you need to do.
Yep. So let's focus. Obviously, that's a good, something kind of a leeway into our next kind of discussion here. But um, obviously, we talked about your product that you have out there that does it. Are there any other things that claims organizations, law firms, stuff like that, are using AI or specifically generative AI to help do it? I mean, in terms of figuring out when claims are ready to settle, stuff like that.
Yeah, so good point. I do. I think that there's a lot going on out there. And I'm not going to, again, not profess to be an expert on the technologies that other folks are using, but I think in the legal field, we're seeing a lot. There's a lot of activity there. Um, from analytics around, look, we can scrape the data from the court system, state and federal, and we can pull up settlement agreements, and we can find out how many times this attorney's matched up against that attorney, and what their settlements have typically look like, and how certain attorneys perform in front of certain judges. There's a whole level of analytics now and predictive analytics around performance of lawyers that I think is fascinating. And I always, again, being an attorney, one of the things that always fascinated me was, look, you may have two attorneys who are doing the same type of work, and one charges $300 an hour and another charges $1,000. Is it worth it for the $1,000 an hour guy? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. But is there a way to use analytics to tell us that, and to kind of get to success rates of lawyers? I think that's really cool, and I'm something that I'm kind of like digging into and talking to a lot of people about, because I think we can start to do things like that now. So I think that's really neat. Lawyers are using it for contract review. Lawyers are using it to draft contracts. Some lawyers are using it to draft their briefs and not reading it
Yeah,
and submitting it.
I think we
And
all saw that example with
right,
the yeah.
but
I think that's obviously we'll go into that a little bit later about the risks
the
of
risks,
using AI, but I think it's stuff where a lot of the law firms that I'm working with and talking to, like you said, I think the big part of it is the ability to use this to create and analyze data is, I think, the key component to
yeah,
using AI more than anything else. I mean, using it to write a brief is fine, but the data analytics side of it is a part of it that amazes me. And I think for structured settlement firms, when you're looking at it, you're going, okay, I've got this client and I've got that client, and I'm spending 4 times as much time on this client. Is it worth it? Am I getting the cases out of it? Are those cases settling? What cases are they sending me? Is there a way for me to analyze where I'm spending my time, what clients are giving me that business, and what clients those cases are now turning into sales? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're selling structured settlements. And I think that's where it can really be used in our industry, is that data analytics side to really determine what makes it worth it and what cases really have a better chance of selling structured settlements.
yeah, I think that's 100%.
Yeah.
And this is where nobody knows the industry as well as you folks on the phone, right? And so what can you do? What can you think of as a way to improve your practice, right? And I challenge all of you to think about that, right? And like that's really cool. If you, and I'm sure, and it doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to boil the ocean, right? It could be a simple thing that gives you more time to spend with your clients, right? Or something like, as simple as that. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of stuff. We're seeing it in all kinds of different fields. Streamlining of the claims process system is a big one. We see a lot of that where AI can just extract out things and pre-fill it. And so you no longer have the person sitting there typing something in, right? That's an easy one, technology wise, right? Easy to do, huge time saver. And you can get robots to do that. Like the robots you can program these RPA, robotic process automation. You can program these robots to do any of that stuff. I'll give you an example. We had, in our business, one of the things we have to do is call Medicare. And it's like push 2, and then you have to wait, and then you push 7, and then you wait, and then you push 3, and then you push 5, and then you enter the social security number, and then you push 4. And it's like this whole stepped process of things you have to type into the phone. We created a robot to do that. And the robot can do that overnight, while we're home sleeping, the robot's doing that. And then all the cases are ready for you right in the morning, already fully reported. That's really cool, and not hard to do, like with the right people. Like, I mean, it's hard for me to do. I wouldn't know how to do it, but there are people that can do this RPA stuff and program these computers very, very quickly. So I just think that you're going to start to see lots of efficiency and lots of little ways that make the process better, quicker, faster, to drive better results.
Yeah. So, I mean, we touched on, a lot of the positives here of AI and all that, and we briefly spoke about the case in I think it was New York, where the guy obviously cited used AI to generate a brief and it cited non-existent sources. Obviously, what are obviously some of the downsides of the AI side of it? I mean, obviously there's a lot of positives, but what are some of the things that people should be cautious of when using AI?
Yeah. So, and again, there's different ways of using Gen AI.
Correct.
And I'll give you the two quick examples. Our use case where we use Gen AI on already run models and have extracted data in that universe. The only thing that Gen AI was looking at was what we already extracted out of those records versus running it on ChatGPT. And it is going out on one of these large language models and it is running the data against billions and billions and billions of bits of information, right? That is a little bit scary. And that is what gets into a lot of the things we hear about where you get fake news or deep fakes. Gen AI can create realistic but false content, right? Because it's
Yep.
basing it on stuff that's out here in the metaverse. So that is the big concern. Anything there where you haven't limited the model to a certain data set, you risk what's out there. You don't know if it's accurate or not. The other risk is using your data set, and I know people who have done this, and it's not a good idea, using your data set and plugging it into a large language model like ChatGPT and inputting your client's private medical information out there. So none of that's out there, right? Like you can't do that either, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got to be really careful about the use case you use, how you're using it, and what information you're sharing with the models so that you're not divulging any issues on your end where you could have data privacy issue. Ethical issues are going to be popping up left and right, I think. Data misuse, where people, again, are taking the personal information and using it without consent. That's not one where, somebody is sharing that information, but people get a hold of it and upload it. That's dangerous. There's a lot of concerns around bias and fairness where if the data used to train the models was based upon any type of biases, it could lead to discriminatory outcomes, right? So people are really nervous about that. And what I'll say is that it's creating a whole new industry, if you will, within large organizations about how do you manage AI and Gen AI as a company.
Yep.
And so there need to be guardrails on when we can use it, when we can't use it, how we use it properly, what information we share with it, making sure that we're consistent with our privacy rules, making sure we're consistent with our our ethics obligations as attorneys or so forth. So I think that there's a whole industry spinning up around that, which I think is also really interesting. And I can tell you, like in talking with a lot of carriers, they're creating these committees now around AI, Gen AI, to review what they want to do in that space. And so it's growing like in front of us right now, like so quickly that these new things are evolving, and it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's one thing that I know, at least in the structured settlement industry, there's been a lot of talk, especially at individual firms about how much AI can be used. Should people be using it and all that? And obviously, I'm not an attorney, thank God. I don't have to worry about any of that. But it is a thing where you got to think based on the licensing that everybody has and stuff like that to ensure that you're not disclosing or putting certain information into AI to generate, even an email regarding putting a structured settlement quote together. You obviously got to be careful about the information you're providing to, let's say, ChatGPT, because you are now giving someone's name or information or anything like that in there that you got to be cautious about what information you're giving to this, because obviously whatever you put out there, I think, I told my daughter that when she got her cell phone, right, that no matter what you type, whatever you text, whatever you video, whatever it is, that's once it's there,
It's out there.
there forever. You can't bring that back in once you put it out there. So yeah. And then obviously, we talked about a lot of the stuff, and I think just to summarize, and then we'll kind of get into questions. I think the structured settlement industry as a whole is not behind in terms of using AI, but definitely not in the forefront of using AI as an industry. And I think there definitely are a lot of opportunities for the structured settlement industry to utilize AI to make our jobs easier and more efficient. Um, I think it's just a matter of, like you said, being cautious about what information we're disclosing in terms of getting that data analytics back out. But I definitely think there's a lot of opportunities there for things that we're doing in our offices and our everyday lives that could be done a lot quicker, simpler, and easier by an AI model than what we have right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's the exciting thing that like we have this new technology. It's revolutionary. How can we use it to make our businesses better?
Yep.
And that's a really, really exciting time, for anybody. So I think, from simple things like the chatbots, like easy customer service improves that, to automating, predicting market trends and using it to analyze financial statements and things like that. There's just so many ways you can use it, but use it with guardrails, use it responsibly, and make sure that you continue to always have a human in the loop, because again, you don't want this bad information or wrong information going out under your signature.
Yep. So we do have a question, and someone's asking basically if they get 1,000 pages of medicals in, obviously. So for your reference, Rob, if we're submitting rated ages to our life markets, they only allow us to send up to 20 pages of medicals. They've got to be recent. They've got to be within 2 years old. They've got to be legible. Could a structured settlement company hire Veritas to provide that, review those medical documents or stuff like that? Or is there a company out there they could go to that could review that medical data and send back the best 20 pages or something like that?
Yeah, I don't think that would be hard at all, particularly because we would have it summarized. So I think we could easily create a model that would extract out, based upon where we've taken most of the information from. We'd love to try it. If anybody wants to give us one, we can run it through our models and see what we can come up with. Love to try it. I haven't done that yet, but I think that's a really cool use case that we haven't used yet.
Yeah, basically just, give us the best of the best and go from there. And yeah,
Yeah,
I think
like,
that's a
and
great idea.
I'll give you an example. Like we had one client that, they wanted a custom model. All they wanted to do was extract out ICD codes. That's all they wanted, because you need that information for inputting it into Section 111 mandatory reporting. And they had somebody whose sole job was to go through and look at ICD codes
Oh,
all day.
geez. That sounds like
And
an absolutely terrible job.
sounds terrible job, but that was an easy model that we were able to just flip, a switch on, and that solved their problem, right? So this doesn't seem hard, but I would bring our data science team in and we could run it through and do a sample and see what we can come up with for you.
Yeah, and obviously we would need the actual individual pages, but yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that would be hard to do, to just say, okay, even if it's just, hey, I think you should look at pages 1734 through 37 and just put a report together with the top potential pages. I think that's definitely something that would be feasible to do.
and again, I haven't done these things for the rated age, but I mean, would a summary page on top of it be helpful too, right? That just summarizes those 20 pages all
Yeah.
within one paragraph. Um, or would it, I don't know. We can show you what we got and you can decide if it's helpful or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. So we have another question. If a claim rep wants to know how many verdicts over X amount of dollars on a case with similar injuries and causation have occurred in a jurisdiction, normally they would have to go to defense attorney, right? They would call you, Rob, in your past life and
Yeah.
go, hey, Rob, we got a case. What is it worth? Is that something that AI will be able to do for them now, potentially on for the carrier side, where they can just generate reports on that? Or is that something where you still need that interaction from a defense attorney? Now that we want to put defense attorneys out of business, but is that something that either the carrier can do directly, or is that something that a defense firm is already doing?
Yeah, so we have another AI tool, in our toolbox called Liability Navigator, that we sell to the carrier market. And within that tool, we have a product called, or a module called Case in Point. And what we can do is we can identify similarly settled claims within that jurisdiction based upon, you know, the person's age, the codes, you know, the venue, et cetera. And we can pull up a list of all of those cases and what they've settled for based upon their client's data. So it's using their own data. It's not using, you know, anything else. It's within the carriers in information. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at. The other thing you can do is you can get like jury verdict data from the states, you know, through scraping the court records. But you're not always going to get the settlements. Like not all of those are going to be able to be captured.
Yeah.
But those
So,
are two ways that
yeah,
we've seen.
you did raise a key point there, obviously, and that is that it's that data security part of it, right? That if it's XYZ carrier, you're not going to share their data with ABC carrier.
No,
And it's got to be, as much as the data is out there, it still has to be segregated to whatever input you're putting in. And you can't just say, I'm going to take everybody's data that we get and share it with everybody. It's purely no, if XYZ carrier has their data, they want to provide it to you for you to do the analytics on, it's possible, but you're not going to say, hey, we're just going to pool everybody's data together and do that, obviously. So
yeah,
that's, I think, a key point for everybody to understand with this is that there's still those restrictions of privacy and that kind of stuff. And if the data is out there, it's easy enough to mine the data, obviously just whatever time it is to do it. But if there is verdicts, if courts put something in there, but obviously we all know that verdicts and settlements are often very, very
very
different,
hard to get your hands on.
different amounts. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think anybody that has seen a plaintiff attorney's website in the most recent times where they're claiming that they've gotten these massive verdicts, and you know, if you settle, you've been on the case, you know that it ends up being nothing like that. But it's a lot easier to show a $300 million verdict than it is a $3 million settlement. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. But obviously that's something within a structured settlement firm that if you guys can utilize that data to say, for example, minors cases between the ages of 2 and 8 years old that fit within this spectrum, what's the most popular settlement plan that's been chosen? That's the kind of data you can generate out of your own internal, information if you have it that can be hugely useful for your firm. Is if certain people are doing things that are resulting in better settlements and better results, then hey, it makes sense to use the data for that. So. Any other questions from anybody?
Going once, going twice.
I know, right? Jen, are you seeing anything else popping up that we missed? I don't think so.
No, that looks good. If I could just ask one question, I love at the beginning when you were talking about the boxes of documents,
Yeah.
really going through all these pages and PDFs that you have to go through. Is there one specific task? And if not, generalize, how much time do you think this has saved you?
Yeah. So the way we came out with it, we said that the ROI, we had people kind of reviewing records, and the average time was 2 minutes per page for a human to read a record, and we're able to process that within a second or 2 seconds. You know, so within an hour, you could do 5,000, 7,000 pages of documents. So you know, we came up with a formula to track that, you know, based upon the salary of the individual doing the review. We actually have a tool on our webpage that does that, because this is the thing that we found really interesting. It's multiple people who touch these files, right? Like it is the adjuster who's got to go through it and organize it. It's the attorney, paralegal, secretary at the law firm that does it. The IME doctors, they get the files, they have to look at it and review it too. You know, the structured settlement broker's getting the file, he needs to look at it, or she needs to look at it too. You know, there's multiple hands that touch a file over the lifetime, and multiple people who are doing the exact same things.
Well, I think that's a big thing, right? Yeah, if we're looking through the medicals and the IME doctor's looking through the medicals and the paralegals looking through the medicals and the claims adjuster's looking through the medicals, providing that, you know, it's not just that saving, you know, potentially hours of looking through it, but it's the hours per person
per person.
of
Yeah.
looking through a document like that. Yeah.
And what gets, I mean, and obviously, I mean, you guys understand this. What makes it really complex, particularly in like a workers' comp claim, is the medicals keep coming in. So what you have today is different in 3 months. And so like, gotta go through them again. Right? We just got another pack of records. And so like it constantly changes. And that's why people constantly are looking at it. And why constantly getting bills for reviewing it.
Yeah.
So it is a time saver. You know, I think more than anything, you know, another part that we like to talk about, it's hard getting people into the insurance industry these days, right? Like into the claims world. And part of it is, you know, it's not the sexiest business, right? But if you have technology that actually helps you to do and take away some of the tasks that aren't more enjoyable, it becomes more fun, right? You know, I was at a conference last week with like people, the claims folks, we all get into it. Like we all love it, but nobody likes to do the tedious work. So if you can do away with that and do away with having to keep pressing the 3 and the 7 and the 10 on your phone, and you automate some of those manual tasks, and then you spend your time doing the things that you're particularly good at, which is talking to clients and serving their needs, because that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, 100%. Okay.
Rob, I think everyone is looking for how they may be able to reach you. Oh, we have another question.
Oh, great. I'll
So-
type in my
Yeah,
stuff,
so
but I can also share some stuff with everybody too, if you want.
yeah, so I would say the next question is, do you believe that using past claims data to predict future outcomes involve considerations that AI can address? Examples include inflation, doctor fee schedule increases, competence of claimants counsel, stuff like that. You know, and I think they're right. I mean, obviously, the past doesn't always predict the future, but it can compile the data, and that's where that human intervention comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to come out and it's not going to say, oh, you've got a leg off case in XYZ jurisdiction. All the previous cases settle for this. You shouldn't settle for more than X at all. And it's not going to do that. It's just going to compile the data to allow a human to then look at it and go, okay, what were the factors involved with that case that might be different? But the more data that it can mine to get that, and the more data points it can provide in terms of, the person's age, where they were, what job they were doing, economic data related to them, medical costs, what type of medical treatment were they receiving? Was it Medicaid? Was it Medicare? Was it all the data that you could potentially get? So a lot of this falls on a claims organization and how well do they have this data point set in their system. And it goes back to the simple, and Rob might tend to agree with this, is if you put shit data into your system, you're going to get shit data out of your system. And it's quite that simple. The more data that this claims organization or a plaintiff firm or whoever it is has, or even a structured settlement firm has, the more data points that AI can trigger on to get you a more complete, at least summary of information.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And it goes back to it. I say it probably too often, but it's like, it's human in the loop. Like you got to have that person, that claims person with experience to be able to interpret the data. That's the key. The data is only as good as the data that gets inputted. One thing that it brings up that I didn't really touch on with our medical AI tool, all of those medical records that were in a box is now structured data. So you can actually use that data for modeling purposes in a way that you haven't been able to use it before. So you can get into things like how many times did they visit that doctor? How many injections did they have? How many different drugs are they on? You can begin to pull those medical details into the claims for this type of analysis that makes it even better, right? Like it's more of a match if you can match up the exact numbers of treatments and the prescriptions and everything versus the guy in an L4, L5 he was in New York, right? That's not enough. But you can start to pull in that medical detail. It could be more. It could give you more insight. And then again, it shouldn't give you the answer, but it should give the adjuster or the claims professional tools to be able to say, based on this, I'm going to offer that.
Yep. Any other questions?